It was the toughest military camp in the country, where only the strongest survived. Yet, there was one woman who didn't seem to belong. She was small, quiet, and not at all what anyone expected from someone trying to make it through such grueling training. The other recruits laughed at her, whispering behind her back. They mocked her every step, convinced she wouldn't last a week. But she didn't quit. Every day, she pushed herself, facing exhaustion, harsh drills, and the endless doubt of her fellow soldiers. As the days wore on, the mocking grew worse. They called her weak, useless, a joke, but she stayed focused, determined to prove them wrong. What they didn't know, what no one knew, was that this woman had a secret, one that would change everything. She wasn't just any recruit. She had a connection no one could have predicted. One morning, as the camp was preparing for yet another brutal exercise, something extraordinary happened. A helicopter appeared overhead, cutting through the sky, landing with a force that shook the ground. And when the door opened, standing there in full military gear, was her husband. But this wasn't just any man. He was the general, the one everyone respected and feared. The mockery stopped. The real story was about to begin. The recruits stood frozen, their laughter turning to uneasy silence as the helicopter's blades slowly wound down. It wasn't every day that a high-ranking officer visited a training camp, let alone a general. As the man stepped out, the tension in the air was palpable. His uniform was flawless, his posture rigid, and there was an unmistakable authority in his every movement. This wasn't just any man. He was a legend in the military, known for his ruthless training methods and no-nonsense approach. But the recruits weren't looking at him. Their eyes were on her, the woman they had mocked, the one they thought couldn't handle the pressure. Now they were all wondering the same thing. What was she doing here? And who was this man to her? The general's eyes scanned the group, and without saying a word, he walked straight toward his wife. The woman's face was a mixture of determination and discomfort. She wasn't sure how to feel. She kept her marriage a secret, not because she was ashamed, but because she wanted to prove she could stand on her own. She didn't want to rely on anyone's connections, especially not her husband's. The general stopped in front of her, his gaze intense. "Ready to show them what you're made of?" he asked quietly, his voice carrying authority and something deeper, something personal. The tension hung thick in the air. What would happen next? The recruits watched in disbelief as the general's words hung in the air. The woman's heart raced, her mind screamed for her to step back, to stay in the shadows, to let this moment pass. But she couldn't. Not anymore. The years of training, the countless hours of pushing herself to her limits, had brought her here. She wasn't going to let anyone, not even her husband, define her path now. The other recruits exchanged looks, trying to piece together the situation. They couldn't understand. Why hadn't she told them? Why had she kept this secret? Had she been given special treatment all along? The whispers started, louder now. The mockery had evolved into confusion and suspicion. "I didn't ask for his help," she said, her voice steady but laced with an edge of frustration. "I'm here on my own." The general's gaze softened for just a moment, but he didn't respond. He didn't need to. His presence alone made it clear that this wasn't just another drill. He had a plan, but it wasn't clear to anyone else, not yet. In the distance, one of the surgeons watched with narrowed eyes. He'd been at this camp longer than most, and he didn't like the disruption. He'd worked his way up through blood and sweat, and he had no patience for anyone who seemed to get ahead by shortcuts. His eyes lingered on the woman, the small but determined recruit who had kept everyone guessing. Was she really as strong as she seemed? Or was she just another one of those military wives, riding the coattails of her husband's reputation? As the tension simmered, the recruits lined up for the next exercise, the ground beneath them heavy with expectation. No one spoke. They could feel the weight of the moment pressing in on them. What would happen next? Would the woman prove them all wrong, or would the general's presence tip the scales in her favor in ways no one could have predicted? The atmosphere in the camp was suffocating now, as if the air itself was holding its breath. The recruits, who had once dismissed her as weak, now stood on edge. Some tried to maintain their composure, but others couldn't help but glance at her, wondering if she was really capable of what lay ahead. They had no idea what she was about to face, and neither did she. The general's unexpected arrival had thrown everything off balance, and now they were all waiting for the storm to break. The sergeant, who had been watching from the sidelines, moved closer, his eyes never leaving the woman. He didn't trust her. No matter how much she claimed she was here on her own, he knew that the general's presence couldn't be ignored. There was no way she could survive this camp without some form of advantage, and that wasn't right. Not in his eyes. He'd earned his place through sheer grit. If she was going to be given special treatment, he would make sure she knew that she had to earn it like the rest of them. The bell rang, signaling the start of the next drill. The recruits scrambled into formation, but the woman didn't move. Her eyes were fixed on the general, who stood tall at the edge of the field, watching silently. She knew what was coming. She could feel a tension crackling in the air, like a thunderstorm waiting to hit. This wasn't just another test, it was the test. She took a deep breath, pushing past the self-doubt that had been gnawing at her. This wasn't about her marriage, or about proving anything to anyone. It was about surviving. And maybe, just maybe, this would be the moment she proved them all wrong. The sergeant barked an order, snapping her back to reality. The exercise was about to begin. She stepped forward, her legs shaking, but her resolve unwavering. The other recruits eyed her cautiously, knowing that whatever came next, it wouldn't be easy. The general's quiet presence was a reminder of everything they couldn't see, everything they didn't know. The whistle blew, and the first drill began. It was grueling, fast-paced, demanding every ounce of strength, every bit of endurance they had left. Sweat dripped down her face, but she didn't slow down. She was keeping up, matching them step for step. But with every move, the eyes of the recruits grew more intense. They were watching, waiting for her to stumble, for her to break. The general stood just out of reach, his eyes locked on her, but his face unreadable. And then, in the middle of the drill, something unexpected happened. She tripped. A small stumble, nothing that should have mattered in the grand scheme of things. But to the recruits watching, it was a crack in the armor they had been waiting for. The laughter started low, but quickly spread through the group. The mocking, the whispers, it all came back. For a moment, she felt the weight of it all. But then, just as quickly, something changed. She pushed herself up, faster than before, as if the fall had only fueled her. The sergeant's face twisted in disbelief. He hadn't expected this. None of them had. The woman wasn't just trying to survive anymore, she was fighting back. As she rose from the ground, the camp seemed to hold its breath. Her stumble, though brief, had ignited a fire within her. The recruits, who had once scoffed at her, were no longer sure what to think. They had expected her to stay down, to give up. But she was moving faster, stronger, pushing herself harder than any of them had anticipated. The tension in the air shifted. What had started as mockery was now fear. But just as she thought she had regained control, the unexpected happened. The sergeant, who had been watching her with a critical eye, stepped forward, his voice cutting through the silence. "You think you can keep up? Prove it." He raised his hand, signaling the start of a different kind of drill. This time, it wasn't about endurance or strength. It was about something far more brutal, hand-to-hand combat. A challenge that would push every recruit to their breaking point. She felt the shift in the air before the first punch landed. Her heart raced, and for a brief moment, doubt crept in. She wasn't ready for this. But then, as the sergeant's opponent stepped into the ring, she noticed something that made her blood run cold, a familiar face. It was the general's second-in-command, someone she knew all too well. He had always been a quiet, watchful presence in the camp, and though he never spoke much, his reputation was enough to make any recruit nervous. His piercing eyes locked with hers, and the subtle smirk on his face made it clear that he wasn't here to simply observe.